You're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think.
Oh, that's easy.
Well, good morning, everybody. Don't you like the change in weather? Can you hardly wait for tomorrow when the cold snap starts coming through again? Well, we've been given a little respite, just enough to be made comfortable enough to understand what it is to be uncomfortable again. But that's kind of the way life goes, isn't it? Don't we confront things, and it makes us appreciate the way things can be, and really, in the life process, often are if we allow them to be. The theme this morning around this topic, just do it, really comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of my heroes, one of the great philosophers of the middle 1800s, considered to be one of the founders of the transcendentalist movement. Back at that particular time, that was a term that was used, the transcendentalism of the 19th century, a group of people in the United States who, men and philosophers and so forth. And they began to think outside the box. And in thinking outside the box, they annoyed a few people because they start letting go of some of the old concepts that tend to restrain our ability to be able to think in new ways. And Emerson was one. He got himself in a little bit of trouble with some of the authorities. As a matter of fact, he was a minister, and they kicked him out because he did not conform to their particular dogma. And he was saying such things as, we're all one. And God is really not out there, but God is within us. But one of my favorite quotations from Ralph Waldo Emerson is this one, where he said, do the thing and you shall have the power. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, think about that. Now you look at that and you may say to yourself, well, okay, but there's nothing really new in that. I think it is fresh and new every time we think of the idea. Actually, the way he put it was, the law of nature is, do the thing and you shall have the power. Now, there's a caveat on that, and that is that it means to do the right thing. Okay? You can exercise power. You can do things and bring power into it, and it not necessarily be the right thing, but sooner or later, it's like you are undermining yourself. You are sowing the seeds of the destruction of whatever that is you're trying to accomplish. He goes on and he says this, this is out of the essay, Compensation. He makes this comment. He says, in labor, as in life, there can be no cheating. The thief steals from himself. The swindler swindles from himself. The gambler cannot extort benefit, which is, however, his with honest care and pains. It is yielded to him. So he's giving us the whole principle. Do the thing, and you'll have the power. But do the right thing. And in another place, in another one of his essays that supports this that I like very much, he says this, power ceases in the instant of repose. That is, the instant that you stop and begin to rest. Rest is good, but not if it's too permanent or too nearly permanent. And then he goes on and he says, however, that is power, resides in the moment of transition from past to a new state. In that movement, you see, the emphasis he's giving to this, the power involves the doing. It's a transition from where you were to where you're going, and it takes some doing in that particular process. Now, we've all heard the old cliche, not cliche, but the motto of Nike. And what is it? Just do it. Well, that's been around for a long time. I heard that when I was a whole lot younger than I am now, and before Nike ever adopted it. Just do it, and it's so true. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, an experience that I had later on in life. But you know, some people just don't know what to do. I mean, you talk to them and they say, well, yeah, I know I should just do it, and then the power will come to me. I don't think they really believe that, and I don't think they really don't know what to do, but they will say, I'm not really sure, I just don't know what to do. And the big question is, What do you want in life? You say, well, I've been asked that question over and over and over. But you know, many people live lives not knowing what it is they want, because they're too busy wanting what others want. Think about that a minute. I have a friend, and he lives out in Los Angeles, and he's a very, very wealthy man. And we were at a convention one time in near Pacific Grove, at a place called Asilomar State Park in California. It's just north of Carmel. And during one of our breaks, we took off and took a little tour down the highway, Coast Highway 1. There's a beautiful, beautiful area. There's Pacific Beach, and way down on the cliffs you see the waves coming in. And up on the other side, overlooking the ocean, are these beautiful, beautiful homes. And we were driving down on this little outing that we had. There were 2 or 3 of us, this friend of mine. And he looked up at a particular house and started talking about somebody that lived in that particular house. And I couldn't figure what was his antagonism about this person. Well, it turned out, it came out in the conversation a little later, that house was worth about $5 million. Now, this is back about 25 years ago. And his house in Los Angeles was only worth $1 million. But you know what I mean? We get so busy looking at what somebody else wants that we never really begin to examine what's moving within us. There is something within every one of us. We have been created by this incredible intelligence. We call it God. We call it the universe. We call it the unknown. There are all kinds of names for this thing. But it's very personal to us, and we've been created out of it, by it, of it. And somehow or another, there has been implanted in each one of us some desires, some drives, some deep longings to express in particular ways. And this is what has to do with our individual expression in this life. And a lot of times we come along and we cover that up, or not willing to face it because we get so caught up with what others or some others are doing or experiencing or having, and that becomes our desire. It's a desire to be able to match what they are doing rather than to unfold the incredible gifts and talents that reside within us. We all have this. You know, I remember as a young boy thinking to myself, and virtually everything that I ever did, I would think, and I still do this, if I'm learning something new, I would be asking myself, how would I teach this? And it took me a long time to realize it wasn't that I wanted to be a teacher, although I suppose this is teaching of a sort, but it was really that I wanted to be a presenter of some sort. Some people say, oh, you got a big ego. I guess I do. That I have to, but I get a kick out of being able to present to people. There's a great deal of satisfaction in that. And I feel a relationship with that. I feel like I'm kind of in tune with something special. I think this is part of what is moving within me. And yet, to stand before people and speak was a terrifying experience for me, or even to consider doing something of that sort. I was very, very self-conscious and self-aware when I was much younger. And a lot of it, I think, was because it translates into very self-centered. And you know where that grows out of? You really think other people give a damn, and they don't. You know what I'm talking about? But this was a difficult thing for me. I was wanting to be able to express in this way, and I just couldn't quite do it. I remember I had an experience when I was in college. I took a course in speech, and it was a traumatic experience because I came away from that after having given my big speech. Our big speech was a 5-minute or 10-minute speech for everybody in the class had to do one of these. And I came away from it feeling so bad about myself that I just shunned doing that sort of thing. And then I was a graduate. I graduated. I went to work in a scientific laboratory as an engineer, scientist doing research. And my research was good. And I started publishing some papers. And then the next thing you know, I got invited to go to San Francisco, the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, across the street from Union Square. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. I'm aware of this very much. And some of you have been there. Really exclusive place. That's where I was going to give my paper. And I went in and I stood up. I practiced that talk for months. I had all the gestures and everything. And I stood up and I delivered my talk. It was perfect. I never heard a word that I said. And then during the question and answer period, I froze. I couldn't respond. Another one of those traumatic experiences. And you know, it was pushing a little bit. It was doing the thing, pushing myself, forcing myself, little bit at a time. It began to open up more and more possibilities for me. Even years later, when I first went into the ministry, I left that other profession and I went into the ministry. And my first full-time appointment was back in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, I had done a lot of speaking by that time, and I had gotten some training in it also. And I, felt pretty good about it. But even there, when I would be speaking before the congregation, it was a new context. I would get the jitters, I would get a little nervous, I would get uptight. I remember one time, and when that happens, sometimes like I did in San Francisco, I didn't know what I said. But sometimes when you get uptight, you don't hear what you're saying, or you fumble with your words. You don't really think as you're talking. And on this particular occasion, I was talking to the congregation about esoteric literature. You know, the Bible and other spiritual literature and how it is allegorical and metaphorical. And I made the comment, and the Bible clearly is mostly symbolic, especially the Old Testicle. I was very, very fortunate in that I didn't hear what I'd said. People were slapping their knees and chuckling. And I'm like, what's going on out there? I had to listen to the tape later to believe what I was told that I had said. But you see, strange things can happen. Now, I look at this now and I think it's kind of funny and it makes kind of a cute story. But it wasn't at that particular time. But it's the doing it. It's the willingness to step out and do it. And after a while, you get comfortable with it. I'm not the world's greatest speaker, but I'm very comfortable with it. Because I do have something to say. I want to say it. And in the interaction with people, things happen. And that's important. I have a friend of mine who... He was a teenage friend. You know how kids are. You go out and you go to a movie and then you pick up a 6-pack of beer and you go. I know you folks probably never did that, but we'd come home and we'd sit in front of one of the other's house, and he was driving on that particular occasion, and we had our 6-pack of beer and we were sitting in front of my house before dropping me off and him going home, and talking about the world and solving the problems of the world. And philosophizing. This was a really, really bright young man, and I really paid attention to what he had to say. And at a particular point, we stopped. There was a silence, and he came out with something that really caught my attention. He says, Richard, I've discovered the secret of success. I could hardly wait. What is it? He says, if you want to be a success, just go be a success. What's he talking about? But he's right. It's a decision that we make. I was listening to somebody on the radio the other day, somebody being interviewed on NPR. And I wish I could remember who it was. And this person commented to the interviewer, says, you know, anything that I have ever really decided that I wanted, I just would not allow myself to not believe that I could have it. And I've always gotten it. It's the same principle. It's just do it. And sometimes we have to take that first step. Sometimes we have to step into that consciousness a little bit. And what I think that does for us, it builds a kind of confidence where you've taken the first step. I've done it. Now I can do just a little bit more. And you take the next step. Just do it. There's a fellow that I knew by a number of years ago. He was born back, he graduated high school back during the Depression. And his name was Harold Swanson. We used to call him Swanee. He lived in Milwaukee. And after he got out of high school, jobs were really scarce because, as I say, it was in the middle of the Depression. He was looking through the newspaper want ads one day, and he came across an announcement. Somebody was looking for a machinist. And so he went to apply for this job. And they asked him, well, have you ever worked in a machine shop? He says, oh, of course I have. He never worked in a machine shop. He says, well, are you a machinist? He says, yes, I'm a machinist. And he just put on such presented himself in such a positive and confident way. They took him out and showed him around the shop. He said, oh, yes. He would be pointing out things that he didn't know about. And he said, well, you know, we'll hire you. And this is where you'll work. And this is going to be your workstation over here. And if you want to start today, you can start today. Just get familiar with the area. Show up tomorrow. But we'll start paying you right now. He said, and that is your workstation. There was a lathe. He'd never touched a lathe in his life. But he hung around and he watched what other people were doing. He asked a lot of questions, and the next day he showed up and he started working on the lathe. Not doing real well. 3 years later, when he was 21 years old, he was superintendent of that machine shop, of that whole division of this company. The same guy, when I met him, never graduated high school. Or when the last time I visited him, he was living in Laguna Beach, California, up kind of in the hills, overlooking the sea. He had this beautiful home, and he was the CEO of a division of a large electronic firm with all these PhD engineers and electronics people and scientists reporting to him. How does this happen? Well, I wish I could say, well, you follow these steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know. But I know it starts with do it. Step forward. Take that first action. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying to go out and perform brain surgery before you have a little bit of training in that arena. When I say do the thing, and you will have the power. What I'm meaning is push yourself. Exert yourself a little bit. Go beyond your comfort zone. There is that within you that will respond. The universe, God, as the universe, through the universal laws, just responds to your intention when you are giving yourself to something that is useful, something that is noble, something that can make a contribution, not just fulfill your own deep down, long time desires to express in some way, but something that is going to manifest out there in a way that's going to satisfy needs and wants of other people. Push yourself a little bit. You've heard my story. I'm not going to go over it again, except I am. Briefly, I took algebra 5 times, high school algebra 5 times. And it was the last time that I finally completed it. Flunked it the first time, dropped out the three other times, and finally took it. And some of you say, well, why didn't you just give up? Well, I didn't. There's something in me said, you need to do this. Something about doing that I liked, and I did it. And of course I went all the way through undergraduate engineering and graduate engineering and took all kinds of mathematics. See, we stop too soon. Do the thing. You'll have your disappointments. But in doing the thing, doors open for you. You know, in being able to meet and talk with people, to stand before them, I was in such bad shape at one particular point in my life that I like that experience at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. And it didn't end there. I had my ups and downs all the way. And here I was working in a scientific laboratory, living in Santa Fe, New Mexico. What I did on one occasion, or one period of time in my life, was in order to be able to stand up and meet people, especially strangers, and talk to them kind of off the cuff, I took a job on Saturdays cold calling, doing sales work. Can you imagine? Terrifying experience. But I did it, pushing. Now, am I bragging? Yes! I guess I am, but I'm the best example that I know of being a klutz who was willing to push a little bit in certain areas and did reasonably well. One of the things that really holds us back, I think, is how do I phrase this? I think many people, and most of us at some time or another, really don't believe in the God that we say we believe in. Now, we don't believe in the principle that was articulated by Jesus where he said, and I of myself I can do nothing. It is the Father within who doeth the work. Now, he's speaking to a kind of unity, a kind of identification that he had with the Father, the source that exists within us. And we talk about these things all the time. I live, move, and have my being in the field of magnificence that we call God. And that's wonderful. It sounds good. It's very flowery and may even be a little inspiring at times. But we tend not to believe that. And the reason we tend to believe that is that we have this thing called an ego. Don't ask me why or where it came from, but we do have an ego. And what the ego is an element of consciousness or an aspect of consciousness that creates separation. I am here and you are there. We are separate, we are distinct. But the fact of the matter is there is a connection between every one of us. We are not separate. We are not distinct. We are all one in the same context that we call the universal mind, if you want to refer to it that way, in the God essence. And that idea extends to our relationship to that essence, our relationship to God. God is out there and I am over here. And there the twain shall meet. Henceforth I shall beg, roll in the sand, do my penance and all of the other things in order to be able to reconcile myself with the God that exists somewhere else. But that God doesn't exist somewhere else. That God is right here at the center of us. And the ego is that element of separation that keeps us essentially alienated from it. At some point, we have to bring ourselves back. How do we do that? Prayer and meditation is a good way. You know, everybody likes to take courses in prayer and meditation. Not everybody follows it up by doing it. Do the thing, and you shall have the power. You know, one of the best examples of this kind of separation that I know of is among some of the scientists that I worked with. This ego separation. When I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, it amazed me how some of the scientists that I worked with, and I was probably among them, I get caught up in the same kind of mentality, I suppose. I definitely did. Hated to admit that they didn't know something. It was like, and I want you to think about this. You know, some scientific process would be discussed and everybody is agreeing. And some of these people didn't know what in the world was going on, what they were really talking about. But they hated to admit that they didn't know. Now, what happens when we do that sort of thing? And in a sense, we do that with each other. what happens is we cut ourselves off from an interaction between people that opens the door for a learning. The moment that we say, tell me more about that. I really don't know. I don't know. Explain it. We've created a conversation. And we've opened ourselves to experience the connection that we have with each other. Isn't that marvelous when you think about this? It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Sometimes it takes real courage, real heart, cœur in French, which means heart. And it takes faith. I love the comment that Ernest Holmes makes about what faith is. He says, faith is an idea so convinced of itself that there is nothing in the mind that can deny it. Think about that. An idea that is so convinced of itself that there's nothing in the mind that can deny it. I want to read to you a quote in finishing up today. This is from Goethe. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, born in the middle 1700s, German, if you hadn't figured that out. And he says this, and it's one of my favorite quotes, especially the last line in this. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves also. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. The whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no one could have dreamt would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. Let's come to center now for a short prayer, affirmative prayer. Take a couple of breaths and relax into this moment. And be reminded that there is only one thing. In the beginning, there was this one thing. It's referred to as the Word, the creative impulse, the infinite intention, by whatever name you want to call it. I call it God. In the beginning was God. All there was God. And everything issued forth through the creative process of God, of the God mind. There is one life, there is one mind, there is one essence, and that life, that mind, that essence is my life, my mind, my essence, for I can be none other than that. And so is it true with everyone everywhere. The one God, the one mind, the one reality embraces it all. Not as separate parts trying to draw them together, but as expressions of itself, moving into the greater context of the evolutionary process we all experience unfolding around us. We are part of that. There is one life. That life is God. That life is my life. And in this realization, I know that I am one with the harmony and the balance, the order, the intelligence, and the creativity of this universe, this God. I am one with that. So all that it is on that infinite scale of things, I am on this finite scale. And in the realization of that harmony, that balance, that order, that creativity and that intelligence, my life is healed in all ways. As we embrace that, the lives of everyone are healed. Wherever the imbalance may be, physical, mental, emotional, or in the spiritual relationship, I am healed. Everyone here is healed. I truly give thanks for this realization. I know that it is so. I accept it as so. And together we declare, and so it is.